So at that point, I know you said you had that little spark of interest as a child about the Navy SEALs, but when you were kind of getting in trouble and all that there in college, getting kicked out, what did you want to do, or did you have any type of plan or idea?
It's a good question. I always knew I was going to the military. Well, was kind of there always. So I kind of took college not that seriously. But there was a time where I was like, I'm gonna be a doctor. So it was like, maybe I'll go be a military doctor. And that was when I started to kind of get focused. And I got straight A's in advanced subjects for about 2 years, probably about a year and a half to catch up, to actually transfer back to University of California school. So I was pretty locked on, but when I transferred back to University of California, Santa Cruz, I realized that aptitude's a real thing. And I hit multivariable calculus and organic chemistry, advanced organic chemistry, and it was hard. And I was struggling, dude. And I also really wasn't disciplined at this time. I started drinking a lot more and partying and girls, and that whole distraction kind of picked back up. And so I was just struggling. So I changed majors, did a pre-law major. And so I actually finished with like a politics and pre-law, like thinking maybe I'll go into law. Because the truth was this, I wanted to be a Navy SEAL, but it kind of felt like a dream. Like growing up in San Diego, dude, I knew a lot of people, not a lot, a handful of people that tried SEAL training, all American water polo players, a couple wrestlers, and everybody failed. Nobody made it. And I'm like, damn, dude, like I'm an okay athlete, but dude, I don't want to end up on a boat. And so getting out of college, I had stacked some problems, a lot of arrests, misdemeanors, DUIs, driving on a suspended, probably had 17 arrests probably in about 2 years. So no felonies though, not like pushing grandmas in the street or robbing people, just being an idiot a lot. So when I got out, and I was so immature, man, thinking back, like what was I thinking? I go, hey, I'm gonna go to the Marine Corps. Hey, that'll be cool because at least I'll get a gun and I'll be able to deploy or whatever. And they said, no, man. They said they wouldn't even talk to me. They said, dude, you're on probation. You have pending court cases. You're an idiot. You can't even be hitting here, really. So I went to jail. I got a judge to commute my probation. I had 3-year probationary term that he's like, we'll commute if you do 6 months in jail. And I was like, okay. Like, I'm not going to wait 3 years. And so I ended up doing 4. Served about 90, so nothing but a lockdown facility in Bay Area, so shitty. A lot of guys waiting to go to the penitentiary, waiting on court cases. I was the only one really there on misdemeanors at all. But I actually felt good when I was there because it felt like I was clearing some stuff up. And so, but no guarantee that any military would talk to me, or that I could get in. But I had this delusional confidence about where I was going. And I still wanted to be a SEAL, but it still felt like a dream. So I walk out of jail, I go start down this process, Marines again. I talked to the officers, they were like, no, dude, you too many tattoos. They actually turned me down for tattoos. So couldn't do tattoos because of the tattoos. Army said, dude, get the fuck out of here. It's like, dude, your background is just too checkered. We don't want
Really, the Army was picking.
Yeah, and so this actually going into another real low point. Dude, when the Army said no, I was right at my mom's house, sleeping on the couch. I'm sleeping in my high school bedroom. I'm 23, fresh out of jail, riding a bike because I had no car. And I remember going, the Army won't even let me in. And I sat on the couch, dude. And if you've ever been, and people watching, ever been in those films where you just feel like hopelessness, that's what I felt like. I was like, the only thing I wanted to do, and I was just assuming it was gonna be kind of a no-brainer. Now they're saying no. Pretty much curled in the fetal position, man, for like 2 days, plus or minus, and not literally, but kind of. So I started researching military units that could take me or would. And that's when I came across the Foreign Legion. I probably knew about them a little bit before when I was a kid, just being in that world, being interested in it. But now it came on my radar again. All right, this is a unit that takes guys with checkered past. I can serve, but I did have student loans and some real life stuff that I wanted to square away before, you're gonna go over there and pop chalks, and that stuff probably wouldn't happen. So I was like, let me give the United States military one last chance.
Because the Foreign Legion is not the United States.
It's not the United States. you're not going to make a lot of money. It's very, very bare bones on the money. So financially, my student loans were pretty massive. You know, my parents didn't pay for college, so my student loans were massive. They were due. They were coming up on being due, and I wanted to handle that. My mom had co-signed for a couple, and I just didn't want to leave that part, so that was a concern. So I went to the Navy and was like, Hail Mary. I was like, dude, I wrote down all my charges and stuff and gave it to the dude, and he goes, we can work with this. And that was a moment where it was like that super low to high, but it was still really unsure. I still had to get through MEPS. I still had to do a lot of strategic answering, you know, with how I went about it. Not lie, I'm not telling people to lie. I'm saying, you know, you got to answer strategically.
Anybody who's been in the military knows about how to answer those questions.
Strategic answering, yeah, strategic truth.
But so at that point, I know you said you wanted to, you know, get some action in some way or another with maybe a weapon. But at that point, walking into that Navy recruiter office, were you just willing to take any, you know, opportunity?
Here's the interesting piece is I went there to be a SEAL, and they said, dude, you can't even get into the Navy really unless you wrangle shit, you know, as a whatever job, or a SEAL, if you can pass all the stuff. Because I couldn't be a corpsman. I had drug charges. I had, you know, there was a ton of jobs I was not even open to. So I said, well, good, man, I'm here to be a SEAL. So that works out pretty solid, but I needed a lot of waivers, tattoo waivers, moral conduct waivers, and a few other things. So, and I suggest anybody do this in any capacity. I said, well, who makes the decisions? And he said, well, there's this, it would really help if you get this Naval Special Warfare motivator guy. He's a retired lieutenant commander, and he would run like Vegas, Los Angeles, and they give letters of recommendation sometimes. I said, all right, well, I'm gonna go find that guy. I called him on his cell phone, and I went down, I was like, where do you guys train? Where do you guys work out? And so after getting through MEPS, by the skin of my teeth, that was stressful. Then I could start taking the SEAL screening test. So I went down there, introduced myself to him, and took the first test and failed. Failed, man. Failed for the run, and just for the run. And dude, it was hard. And I realized, I looked down and they called, Cavanaugh, fail, step back. And I looked down at the line of the failures and I went, I'm never gonna be in this line again. And that's when I got real serious about going down to the Naval Special Warfare Center, training with this group. It was all guys that were pretty motivated. And that took me about 9 months, running up in Pendleton with another active duty SEAL who connected with me back from social media, which was really cool when I was in the Legion. That was badass. And he puking every day. I lost 40 pounds, man, in probably 6-7 weeks. And just taking it, stacking boxes at Home Depot at night, working the graveyard shift, feeling good about stuff. And this is another cool part because we're talking about those lows and highs. It was interesting. If I think back to one of the most happy times in my life, it was at this time. You're like hopeful. Your life is simple. I have a $500 car.
Had something to look forward to.
And something to look forward to. And you always need something. And I'm like, I was dating this chick at the time. This is something I probably never mentioned, but I was dating this chick at the time, and she was like, her mom was like, what does this guy even do? He's a loser. He lives at his mom's house, and he's working at Home Depot. But she didn't know I was training for SEALs, right? And my girl at the time, she was like, oh, he's training. She's like, oh, sure, whatever. It just goes to show you that people from the outside in, nobody knows your level of fortitude or vision. Nobody knows what you're trying to do. And so from the outside in, it doesn't matter. It's what feels good in your heart. External validation, as we'll get into, is futile. That is a very dangerous thing to seek. So don't worry about it. You got to feel good about what you're doing, and when you lay your head on the pillow. Those simple days were some of the best days of my life. And lo and behold, 9 months later, they call me and said I got my SEAL contract, and I shipped out on that. And this was February 2010 timeframe. Give people kind of a timeline.